everybody. Welcome to the polar inversion episode of Live at 5 on a cold, wintry. I don't know if this is what it looks like outside, but that's what I'm feeling like. You know, it's cold out there, and I hope you're warm and cozy. Thanks for joining me again for Live at 5. Here we are, still at it, but with good news on the horizon. There's good news. We have in Denver we've been downgraded to a yellow, which is awesome, and we're very soon, I think, to be getting out of the house. That means that we can go back out to restaurants again, where everyone is safe from germs. And wow, it's snowing all over. So that's amazing. Thanks for sharing with us, Dave. You got weather. I was actually watching this really cool news report that yesterday there was a tiny pocket of snow in the middle of like a very dry area, and it seems like that the presumption is that was what they call industrial snow. That it was sort of north of Metro Denver. That because you have all these some production facilities pumping out steam, that creates snow. It was a good snow. It was like really collecting. It was cold and it was snow collecting on the ground. It wasn't just like some frozen steam, but that snow in this small little area around which there was no snow was industrial snow. So that's my new favorite. It must be industrial snow up there by the airport. That's what I think you have. And meanwhile, hope you enjoy it. But it's some sort of a crazy thing where I don't know what this means. If I were really a meteorologist, which I'm definitely not, nor do I play one on Live at 5. I always thought meteorologists are like it's got to be the most just, when all the scientists get together, it must be the meteorologists are just sort of embarrassed because, what do they know already? All they can say is, 50% chance, 100% chance. And they can't say 100%, some percentage of chance. It's embarrassing to be a meteorologist amongst all the scientists that have real knowledge. But they say something as a polar inversion, some crazy weather thing that enables us to have super frigid cold weather. And I just hope you're enjoying it. Actually, you know what they do now to improve their weather predictions? They just keep making the predictions closer and closer to the actual weather. So they're telling you what's going on. It'll be going on in 15 minutes. It'll be going on in 10 minutes. It's going on now. It's pretty hard to get that wrong. I mean, they can still do it, but as the closer you get to the moment of the weather that you're reporting on, it's supposed to like 10 days from now. Listen, I jest, but I think it's really incredible. Sometimes they will tell you that the snow will start like tomorrow at 1, and boom, 1 o'clock tomorrow, it starts. And I think that's really pretty cool. Actually, on that note, the Talmud actually says that predicting the rain with perfect accuracy is not spiritually possible. So this maybe is a saving grace for those meteorologists at the scientific conferences where they have to hide their faces. The reality is they're in a field where the Talmud says is impossible. Talmud says there are 4 keys. Okay, there are 4 keys in life that God doesn't give away. He keeps himself, and they are the keys of the womb, the keys of the grave, the keys of rain, and the keys of your bank account. Now, what does that mean exactly? So let's talk about what that means. When we say this, because this is a very interesting idea. What does it mean God keeps the keys? Is he walking around with it? He doesn't have a key ring. He doesn't have a pocket. He doesn't have keys. So it's obviously, it means something much deeper. The idea is that in general, the way that God runs his world is that he uses tools and emissaries, as it were. He puts a system in place, and the system in place handles it. He delegates, and any good leader does. And he has harbe shluchim lamakim, which means he's got a big team. He's got a deep bench. So if he wants to, consistently, there'll be gravity. So he's got the laws of thermodynamics that handle that, et cetera, et cetera. There are all kinds of natural processes, which are his emissaries, which are his team that gets the world run in a normal order. But these 4 things, the Talmud says, are not in any perfect systematic order. He doesn't give these keys over. There is no such system that you can say with perfect accuracy when this baby will be born. They'll predict it maybe about 9 months. We it's coming around then, but you can't predict the minute that it will come. There's no algorithm for that. There's no perfect system. That God has kept the key in his hand, and it'll happen when he says it'll happen. And the other one is the moment of death. None of us can know. I was just listening to a podcast today, brief podcast by one of my favorite Jewish educators, Rabbi Jonathan Rietti. Rabbi Rietti is an amazing British born, so everything he says is obviously wise because he has a British accent, and he was talking about how. I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. That happens occasionally. I'm getting older. Having a senior moment. Let's see. What was I talking about again? Weather, and then death. Oh, he was talking about this lady who had been diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. And they said that 90% of people in her circumstances don't live 5 years. And she was giving a talk publicly after 8 years, and it was 2 years ago, and she's still alive. So she's 10 years. So, no one knows. No one knows. The doctor can't say this is when your time will come. No one. It's not one of those things that there's a perfect system. That God he keeps that key. And also the rain, number 3, the rain. We don't know exactly when it's going to rain. You don't know. Maybe it's going to rain. Maybe it's not. And that's why the meteorologist can only give you percentages. 20% chance tomorrow, 2% chance, 40% chance. Who knows? It's not in their power to perfectly predict. And likewise, it's the fourth in that list in the Talmud is the key to your bank account, which means the parnasa that you have, the wherewithal, the living you're going to earn. That, you could go to the best college, you could get the best job, and then you don't end up being fabulously wealthy. Or you could get, a guy who, fumbled his way through high school and ended up landing a job and or winning the lottery or just inheriting a bunch of money or backing into it and has tons and has boatloads. There's no real perfect system or correlation. It's one of those keys that God keeps. That's why we ask for it. These are things we ask for. We pray for these things. We pray for rain. We pray for, for healthy childbirth. We pray for long life, and we pray for wherewithal, for God to shower us with income. Anyway, those are some thoughts that I'm just thinking about with this backdrop of the weather. Hope you're staying warm, and let's take it out of here. Let's go back to the studio, just because I'm getting a little chilly, and who needs that? So the show that I wanted to share with you today, a couple of things. Number one, I learned something very interesting, and I want to share a mazel tov first of all. Mazel tov to my colleague Alex, whose cousin Boris had a baby boy, and named him after me. I mean, not really after me, but gave him the same name as me. So that was a mazel tov. He named the baby Raphael, and a time-honored Jewish and Hebrew name. And so when I was talking with Alex about this, and I was trying to really impress him with the 5 or 8 words of Russian that I know, because he's Russian, and Amshaslavsky is the last name, and I'm sure Boris. And so I told him that, Umenya Adin Brata, which is the 4 of those 8 Russian words I know, which means I have one brother. Very exciting for me to be able to say that. I took a semester and a half of college Russian for me to be able to get to that point, and there I am. The reason I was chit-chatting with him about this is because I was trying to establish his relationship with his cousin's son, which I think that you'd call that first cousins once removed. So he told me that in Russian, that the word for cousin is brother once removed. Is that the coolest thing? What the way that in the Russian language you refer to a cousin is like a brother once removed. So how cool is that? So that's the coolest thing. A cousin is interestingly in Hebrew, you have the language of dod, which can mean an uncle, or I think in modern Hebrew it can also be used for like a cousin. It could be uncle, it could be cousin, it could just be dear kin. it can mean kin. So you can be close at various levels. Anyway, that's a little Russian language lesson for you on Live at 5. No extra charge. What I more wanted to talk about today is that we have a very big moment in the calendar, which is going on right at this very moment. And as we've said earlier in the week, that tomorrow, which starts right now, tomorrow is now on the Jewish calendar, right? It's now is already tomorrow because we change days at sunset. So it's becoming tomorrow right this minute. And tomorrow is Rosh Chodesh. And it's not just any Rosh Chodesh, but it's one of the more fun Rosh Chodeshes, Rosh Chodesh being new months. Like Rosh Hashanah is the new year, the beginning of the year. Rosh Chodesh is the new month. And this is the more fun one. It is the month of Adar. And the Talmud says that when the month of Adar begins, we just increase in joy. And so it's considered to be an upbeat, festive time. It's nice to be here. And I want to talk about it because it's interesting on a couple of notes. Number one, today is Rosh Chodesh Adar, but it's not yet the month of Adar. And I know that sounds mind-blowing, but let me explain what that means. The Rosh Chodesh Adar, it is a day which we're recognizing and celebrating the beginning of the month. And tomorrow, if you're in a synagogue, you're going to see they're going to do the special liturgy of Rosh Chodesh. But it's really not yet the first day of the month of Adar until the next day, until Saturday, until Shabbos. Tomorrow is the 30th day of the month of Shvat. So that's like a real mind bender. It's giving me wrinkles. It was still in the month of Shvat. It's day 30, but it's also being celebrated as Rosh Chodesh Adar. And here's what that's about. So you may be familiar, hopefully we're familiar with the fact that our Jewish months are lunar in nature. The word month, and even in English, comes from the word moon. All months are supposed to be lunar. Although in the calendar with which we're familiar, there's sort of secular American calendar, there is no longer any correlation between the lunar cycle and the moon in the sky and the month. First of all, the lunar cycle is 29 days. There's no such thing as a 31. How could you have a 31-day month? It makes no sense because it has nothing to do with the moon. And you just see that, the months are very, in American calendar, are very fixed and permanent. And then suddenly, the moon is doing whatever it is. It could be full at the beginning of the month. It could be full at the end. It could be full in the middle. There's no rhyme and reason to it. There's no pattern of a month that corresponds directly with the lunar cycle, like in the Jewish calendar. But in the Jewish calendar, we have exactly that. And what that means is that when, the month begins and the lunar cycle is beginning and it's a new moon and it waxes, and in the middle of a Jewish month, you have a full moon. And then the last half of Jewish month, the moon is waning again and it disappears. So it's about to be Rosh Chodesh. So last night I was driving home on the dam road by Cherry Creek, and we drove into Cherry Creek. I was with my wife. We were running an errand, and in the middle of Cherry Creek State Park, we turned off all the lights. We turned off the car because the stars were like unbelievable. And it was one of the nearby places where you can kind of get away from the city and the street lights, and you could really see some stars. It was awesome stars, and there's no moon. So right at the beginning of any Jewish month, the beginning of the month is where the moon is very new. So last night, there was no moon, and the stars were great. Now, this is a totally parenthetical detour. There happens to be a great app. I don't think it's on Android, but it's an iPhone app for checking out the stars and constellations. It is really cool, and it allows you, basically, you just hold up your phone, kind of, point in any direction, and it'll tell you exactly what's going on in the sky right there. It's like a little sky map, and it's very interactive. And when you point at a star, it'll tell you what the star's name is, and it'll show you the constellation that it's in. And when you point it to like a planet, then you can, it shows you a little planet and tells you what it is, whatever. So when we're looking at the stars last night, we're using this app, and it'll tell you, by the way, you could see stars in the sky, and you could see the stars in the southern hemisphere because the app doesn't care what hemisphere you're in. It'll show you, all the entire globe of stars, not just the stuff that's actually in your sky. And it happened to be, I'm not kidding you, the weirdest thing I've ever seen in the sky going on in this app last night. There was in one spot, and I'm talking about in one spot, overlapping in the constellation Capricorn, there was simultaneously the sun, the moon, Saturn, Jupiter, and Venus. It was like unbelievable. It was 5 of the stars that we see in the sky: the moon, the sun, Jupiter, Saturn, and Venus were all in one little spot on top. I don't know, that this is like some a crazy thing. I think, and if I were, if I were a stargazer, I would say that the world is over or that Mashiach's coming or something. So thank God I'm not a stargazer. Go check that out. Go look up your astrological news, and you will see that something huge happened yesterday. Anyway, the now just that was my parenthetical detour. And so back to the topic at hand. The month of Adar, and really any month, should start at the end of the lunar cycle of the last year. Now, the lunar cycle, if you want to drill right down to it, is not 29 days, as I said before. It's 29 and a half days. It's 29 and a half days, almost exactly. So give or take 29 and a half. So what are you going to do? You can't have a new month starting in the middle of a day. So what you have to do is you have to decide, and the Torah actually gives us the purview to decide whether or not is any given month going to be 29 or 30 days, because it got to be one or the other. And then we're going to roll right into the next month. So either it's 29 days of the old month and the new month starts, or the old month gets stretched and is 30 days and then the new month starts. Now, we are not, back in the day, and I say back in the day, like way back in the day when the temple stood and the Jews had the temple in Israel, it was a game day decision. That means that they would actually then not be sure until someone would say, I saw the moon already. The new month can start. The witnesses would come. They would go to the high court. The high court would interrogate them and make sure that they weren't making it up. And when they got accurate testimony by 2 witnesses that the new moon was present, then if they got that in the right time, then the old month could be 29 and the new month could begin. And if they didn't get that testimony, then the old month became 30 days, and then the new month would begin. And it was a game day decision every month. They're going to figure out, is this month a 29er or a 30? Now, that is not a system that we have anymore, and we haven't had that system. We have a very fixed calendar for already more than 2,000 years since this process was, or maybe slightly less. Hillel was set up by someone called Hillel the Elder. Not the Hillel of great renown, but one of his great grandsons, and he actually set up a fixed calendar for us, and it's a little less than 2,000 years of fixed ongoing calendar. But anyway, when it was done, when it was a game day decision, it could have happened that the day was almost over before the witnesses would come running in, and when they'd say, we saw the moon last night, and today would become Rosh Chodesh, and it was about over, and they would have almost missed it. That could happen. That's what a game day decision would allow for. And so therefore they said, we're going to treat it like it's Rosh Chodesh, just in case. And they created this concept that it would be a 2-day Rosh Chodesh, even if somebody came and saw the moon or not. They would say we could have a 2-day. Now, what's 2 days? What does it mean 2 days? It means if last month was going to be day 30, then we're going to pretend. We're not going to pretend, but we're going to bequeath the celebration of Rosh Chodesh upon it, and then the next day will be really day 1 of the new month, and so of course that's going to be celebrated as Rosh Chodesh, and you end up with celebrating 2 days as Rosh Chodesh. And when that was back in the day when it was a game day decision, when the calendar became fixed, then they have a patterned back and forth. Every other month, 6 months of the year are 29 days, 6 months of the year are 30 days. And then you end up with an average of 29. There's a little bit of more complex variations in here, which is beyond the scope of today's show. You can see me after class for more information. And basically what you end up with is sometimes 6 times a year, roughly, you have 2 days which are celebrated as Rosh Chodesh. And when that happens, the first of those 2 days is the 30th of the previous month. And then the second of those 2 days is the first of the actual new month. Now that is a lot more than you ever wanted to know. The subtitle of this class was much more than everything you always wanted to ask and always wanted to know and really don't want to ask. We should call it this. We should give the subtitle of the show everything you really didn't want to know, but it's Rabbi Leban considered it as if you asked it. So we've been talking about it. Now that is a general topic of celebration of Rosh Chodeshes. But there's one more cool thing which is relevant specifically for this Rosh Chodesh Adar. Okay, Rosh Chodesh Adar, and that is this. We actually, again, this is going to take us back in the day, and whenever Jews say back in the day, they mean when the temple stood in Jerusalem. Those are the good old days. The good old days. So the good old days, the golden age, the golden days is back when we were all in Israel and the temple was up there with us. Now, in those days, the Jewish people were busy doing a national service. That was the temple, what was going on in the temple, the national service. And the national service would mean daily offerings. Every day we had an altar. There were offerings to God brought. That's the service of the Jewish people. It's, the Torah has plenty of ink spilt on this topic. And if you really want to know more about it, there's tractates of Talmud about it and fabulous, fascinating things. And it's one of the subjects that's discussed in the current tractate that the Daf Yomi is studying. That means I'm teaching it every morning at 5:40 a.m. You're welcome to join me. And that is a tractate, Psachim, which is all about Passover, talks about offerings, because one of the most famous offerings, of course, was the Paschal lamb. The Seder that we celebrate is part of a figurative part of the Seder, is where we would actually eat part of the meat that was from the Paschal lamb, means the Passover offering, and it was a sheep or a kid, goat, and that's maybe one of the most famous, and there's a lot of discussion in that tractate about the offerings. Now, why do I bring up the offerings now? It happens to be that this national service was, as I said, national, and that means that everybody together had to pay for it. Okay, if it's genuinely going to be national, that means it has to come from a national fund. This is fascinating, but there was no possibility that one individual could up and say, I want to sponsor today's national offering from the Jewish people. Can you imagine? You would take that little sheep and they would maybe like brand him with in memory of so and so or in honor of so and so. You put it right on him, and there was no such thing as that. You could not do it. It was not up for grabs. No individual was able to sponsor, dedicate, or otherwise be the one to pay for that or contribute that. It had to be national. It's a national offering. National service has to be paid for by and come from everybody. Now, how do you do that exactly? How do you manage that logistically speaking? So, Jews are clever about their money. So they figured it out. And the way they would do it is they would take once a year, they would take a collection, and everybody was obligated. And this is actually described in the Torah itself. Everyone is obligated to participate on an annual basis to the national fund of offerings from which these offerings were acquired and purchased and then brought, because that way, if we all put money into the fund and the fund is used for to purchase and acquire them, then it's like all of us, it's all of our purse. We all paid for it. It's all of ours. It's national. And that's the way it would work. It's national. And they had this annual national collection, and everybody would contribute. And how much would they contribute? A half a shekel. Ever heard that idea? The half a shekel. The Torah talks about the half shekel. The shekel is you're probably familiar, the denomination of Israeli currency today. But that word shekel comes straight from the Torah. It was a currency. It was the word shekel in Hebrew actually means weight, like you weigh something out. Lishkol, shokel means to weigh something. So the word shekel is like a weight. The original coin value was probably it had a weight and a size. And that was a coin, and it's a shekel. So every individual's annual contribution was a half a shekel. And when did we give those half shekels to contribute to this national offering fund annually? We did it in advance of the new year of offerings. When do we conclude last year's fund and dig into next year's fund? The way we do that is the time that we do that is Rosh Chodesh Nisan. Now Nisan is 1 month from now. It's the month in which Passover happens, and it's the month right after Adar. So it's Rosh Chodesh Adar, and in 1 month's time it'll be Rosh Chodesh Nisan. Rosh Chodesh Nisan, they had to have already the new money. They would start spending it then. So when did the collection take place? It took place this month. And there was a practice that they would make a huge public announcement on the Shabbos immediately preceding or on itself Rosh Chodesh Adar. And this parsha actually has a special name because of this practice. So this is one of the Shabboses. We're going to do a special Torah reading tomorrow, which is we're going to read all about this half shekel collection. And the parsha has a name that's called Parsha Shkolim. It's like the in addition to the regular parsha reading of Mishpatim that we're going to do, we're going to read an extra little portion of reading, which is Shkolim. And the idea of the Shkolim, the shekels, by the way, is, again, we read about it, we're reminded, it's a public announcement, and everybody now, you have 1 month to come to Jerusalem and contribute your shekel, put it into the box and contribute it so that at the end of the month, that becomes the new annual fund is thereby collected for all of the people for the national offerings. Okay, so again, it's a little bit of a history, but it's relevant to this particular parsha because it is we still have this custom even thousands of years later. We're still remembering that, and still, in fact, there is a custom as well to before Purim to contribute a half shekel. And even though we don't have shekel coins, we use $50. And in many synagogues on right before Purim, there's a collection opportunity, and we can symbolically. It's not the same thing. We don't have this fund anymore. Obviously, we don't have the temple at the moment. We don't have offerings. May God speedily return them to our hands, and may we have these opportunities again. Really, meanwhile, we don't. But we're doing a symbolic gift, and you could give it to synagogue or some shul or some other tzedakah. But it's done right before Purim, and the announcement is made here, and it's Parsha Shkolim. So it's I'll tell you just one last thought, and we'll close with this. It's a half shekel. It's not it's what an odd thing, right? If shekel is the basic denomination, give a full shekel. What's the half? Why is it a half? So there are many beautiful things pointed out about this interesting half shekel denomination gift. Now, but one of them that many commentaries point out is that half a shekel represents a sense of incompleteness, as if to say that my half a shekel is not the whole story, not the whole picture. When I want to give a half a shekel along with you together, you and I both together give a half shekel, now we have a whole shekel. Each one of us should feel a degree of we're not whole unless we can come together, contribute our half, and be part of something greater, be part of the Jewish people. So the way that we do that is we give our half shekel along with everybody else's half shekel, and now you have the national fund. The Jewish people's collections are made by a whole lot of half shekels. Each one of us is trying to be whole by being together with everyone else, being part of the whole. Very beautiful idea. We want to develop ourselves as individuals and as parts of a beautiful, thriving, healthy community. May God speedily and soon in our days bring back the opportunity we can really give these shekels, really bring these offerings, make the game day decision about how long the month will be, and then we'll, of course, be back in Jerusalem to do all those things. B'mheira v'yameinu. Thanks for joining us. Tomorrow, we're going to have, if you're interested, we're going to have our weekly Zoom and Zing and Zemer into Shabbos, which will be, I think, tomorrow at 4:45 on its weekly link. Otherwise, we'll see you back here Monday at 5 for next week's Live at 5. Have a healthy, have a holy, and thanks for joining us at Live at 5.